Meanwhile, the HOA kept sputtering. They still sent letters. Tried to fine people for things like leaving trash cans out too long or not mowing exactly on schedule. But no one took them seriously anymore. Their president, a guy named Darn, came by one afternoon to negotiate. He tried to talk about cooperation and community image. I stood with my arms folded, listening while he danced around the topic, refusing to apologize for what happened to Dad. When he finished, I looked him dead in the eye. "You had a choice," I told him. "You could have stood up for him, but you didn't." He stammered some lame excuse about legal advice. I shook my head. "You can have your little board," I said, "but you're done pushing folks around." Then I turned and walked back toward the firing line. That conversation went around the neighborhood fast. People realized I wasn't going to be bullied, and neither should they. Dad liked to tell stories while folks shot targets. One day, he was explaining how he used to qualify on an M1 at Camp Pendleton, telling a group of teenagers about the importance of keeping your rifle clean. I watched those kids hang on every word. That meant the world to me, but I still hadn't fully forgiven Gordon. Even though he'd moved away, part of me wanted to confront him, to see him admit what he'd done. I tried to let it go, but sometimes I'd wake up in the night and picture Dad lying there bleeding because of a hedge. One day, fate gave me a chance. I was grabbing lunch at a diner in the next town over when I spotted Gordon sitting alone, pushing a half-eaten burger around on his plate. For a moment, I almost left, but then I walked right up to him. He froze. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just looked him in the eyes and said, "You'll think about what you did for the rest of your life. And you should." Then I turned and left him there, looking like he'd seen a ghost. That was enough for me. By midsummer, Liberty Range had grown so much that I added a clay shooting section and archery targets, too. We hosted our first charity match, raised over $10,000 for local veterans. Dad was there to award the trophies, beaming like a general inspecting his troops. I'd never seen him prouder. One afternoon, a reporter from a national shooting magazine came to do a feature. He interviewed me about how the range started, about Dad, about the HOA fight. At the end, he asked, "Do you ever wish you'd just paid the HOA fine and avoided all this?" I laughed. "Some fights are worth it," I told him. "Some hills you stand on, no matter what." He nodded and wrote that down. That quote made it into the article's headline. Some hills you stand on fall came around again. Dad's health was strong, his balance back, no headaches. I remember one morning, we stood side by side on the 25-yard line, targets flapping in the breeze. He turned to me and said, "You know, I thought my fighting days were over." I smiled. "You taught me how to stand up," I told him. "It was your fight, so it's mine too." He wiped his eye and pulled me into a hug. That was the best day. Christmas was a blowout that year. We turned the range into a winter festival. Hot cocoa, target competitions with tiny ornaments, even a Santa who posed with kids next to a vintage lever-action rifle. The HOA didn't even try to object. They showed up with their own kids. In fact, nobody said a word about property values. In January, we put up a small brass plaque near the front gate. It said, "This range exists because good men refuse to kneel." Dad ran his fingers over the letters, tears shining in his eyes. Life settled into a good rhythm after that. The HOA shrank back to its original purpose, maintaining the pole and the sidewalks, nothing more. Neighbors started being neighbors again, helping each other instead of spying. Folks began to feel free to fly their flags, park their trucks, paint their mailboxes however they wanted. It was like the poison had finally drained out of the place. One night, Dad and I sat on the porch with Buddy, a cool breeze blowing through the oaks. He sipped his coffee, then said, "I could have lost everything today." I nodded. "But you didn't." I told him, "And you never will."